To defeat the evil Skeletor, He-Man and his friends travel to Earth, where they team up with two teenagers and a cop. Listen as we discuss Mattel's desperation for a hit toy line, wild cows in America, and a dangerous Gwildor drinking game. I have the power to find out if 1987's Masters of the Universe stands the test of time.
It's the test of time. James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glare, and Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time.
By the power of Grayskull, I'm James Brief, and this is the Test of Time podcast where we look at older movies, at least 15 years old, sometimes way older, like in today's case, almost 40 years old. And joining me today, as always, my co-host and buddy and pal, and the director and editor of this podcast, Mr. Alan Noah. Hey, Al.
Hey there, James. I know you're excited for this episode, aren't you?
I am. In the 80s, mid-80s, you were either into He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, or Thundercats, or Transformers, and GoBots, and Voltron for kind of the robot era. Yeah. And then there was also things like G.I. Joe. I was huge into He-Man. He-Man was my number one. I was sort of into Thundercats, barely watched Transformers and GoBots or G.I. Joe. What about you, Al? What was your jam? Like, what were you hoping to get for a birthday present in 1985?
See, in terms of all of those cartoons that you just listed, I wasn't into any of them. The only cartoon that I remember really liking from the 80s was Super Friends, with the guy who would say, "Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice."
Okay.
Aquaman and the Wonder Twins and all that. I loved that. And I wasn't really into any of those other ones that you mentioned.
You didn't watch Saturday morning cartoons or after school cartoons, or, what did you watch at 4:30?
I feel like I was more into playing Nintendo. I would just grab the controller and play, Super Mario Brothers or whatever.
You didn't play with action figures as a kid?
I didn't really. I didn't have action figures. I don't remember my mom having a rule against action figures. I got a lot of hand-me-downs from my cousins, so maybe they weren't into action figures, or I just didn't want them. I don't know if there was a reason, but no, not really.
And you're kind of the outlier here.
Yes.
In the 1960s, there were cartoons that were made specifically to sell toys.
Yeah.
And then this was outlawed. In the Reagan administration, they got rid of this regulation. And immediately, Mattel, they want to make an action figure line because they got destroyed in the late 70s. There was this director guy. He had made one film before, American Graffiti, and somehow 20th Century Fox, for nothing, gave this guy, George Lucas, the merchandising rights to his whatever, a potential flop 1977 film. Of course, I'm talking about Star Wars. And all the major toy firms were approached to make the Star Wars action figures, and every single one of them said no. And do you remember which one famously said yes to, it was a small toy company that said yes to George Lucas?
Kenner.
Right, Kenner. Kenner said yes, and they made what today is the holy grail of valuable and children's toys, but not just valuable today for collectors, storing them in the box. This is what every child in the late 70s played with. So Mattel desperately wanted to get back into the toy game, and so Masters of the Universe, it was a toy line with the show designed to focus on the toy. I remember there being episodes where the entire thing would be about focusing on this really elaborate vehicle that He-Man or Man-at-Arms is driving. And it's a really stupid vehicle. Like they already have a tank or they already have a flying thing. But okay, this thing just kind of swings around for no good reason, but it's also available in every commercial between them.
Transformers was the same thing, right?
Yeah, same thing. And G.I. Joe and the He-Man action figures were famous for that, this elastic waist. So if you twisted their hip to the left or right, they would swing back into neutral position. After holding a sword, it kind of looks like they're swinging a sword or whatever, shield or whatever they're doing. And all of those commercials were so elaborate. I mean, I never had the G.I. Joe stuff, but I remember these children were digging trenches in their sandboxes, and the G.I. Joe tank would fire a little Nerf missile and it would blow down a single log and it would cave in a whole cavern. You remember these commercials, right?
Yeah.
That's what He-Man was. It was so huge. And they actually released a movie, not this movie. They released another movie called The Secret of the Sword. Mm-hmm. And I actually saw that in the theaters, and I was super psyched about it. I couldn't believe there was a He-Man movie in the theaters. And all it was essentially was a 2-hour-long cartoon episode. And they eventually did break it into 5 episodes. And you could tell during the movie, like, where there's just breaks for the new episode. But the thing that movie introduced was it introduced She-Ra, the princess of power. And if they could revolutionize everything for boys, they thought they could do the same thing for girls. I liked She-Ra. I watched it as a kid, and I thought it was cool. She-Ra kicked ass. She wasn't exactly He-Man. She had her own thing. But I had read that what She-Ra did was it diluted the franchise and it made it into a quote-unquote girl's toy. Oh. It did dilute the brand, and by the time this movie came out, the brand was gone. When this movie came out, I, as a die-hard He-Man fan, was not that into seeing this in the theater.
As a father, what you like at one age can be radically different from what you like literally 6 months or a year later. It's frustrating when you buy all of these Thomas the Tank Engine toys and then the kid hates Thomas the Tank Engine and now they love Octonauts. So you buy all the Octonauts toys and then they hate Octonauts and then it's Spider-Man or whatever. I'm the person who has spent all this money on these toys that become garbage very quickly. But I can't imagine that it was really She-Ra's fault. But the idea of blaming the girls, that tracks.
There's a lot of things that did it. Oversaturation of the market. They just released too many action figures. They canceled the series. There's only 2 seasons of He-Man, even though there's like 60 episodes per season. And then this film, Masters of the Universe, had unbelievable production problems. You've heard of Canon Productions?
Yeah, we've talked about that many times.
Yeah, many times. I mean, they greenlit this film at like $40 million, and they did the same thing with Superman 4, and then they just slashed the budget of all of these films. And you can't really do that. I mean, you have to make enormous compromises in a film like this. Like, there's a floating character in the He-Man universe called Orko.
Right.
And he has no face and he floats. And in this film, there's no Orko. There's this guy, Gwildor. I totally get it. He's kind of the Orko character. Cool. You have to make compromises no matter what.
Because I didn't watch the He-Man cartoon, did any of that take place on Earth, or was that all on Eternia?
There is a very, very tangential link of He-Man to Earth. He-Man's mother is like an astronaut that got like sent in a wormhole by accident and landed on Eternia, but it never takes place on Earth. I think there's one like Christmas episode where a couple kids get transported to Eternia.
Okay.
So there's always a little tie to it, but this movie takes place 70% on the planet Earth,
right.
And that has nothing to do with He-Man. A lot of the mythos from this is not from He-Man. The sword isn't even correct. Like, the sword is a basic sword.
You really just sounded like one of the nerd characters on The Simpsons. The sword is not even correct.
It's just weird because, as a kid, I remember this film. I did watch it. I don't know if I saw it in the theaters or if it was a very quick rental, but I definitely wanted to see it. And I remember being, not in a nerdy way, but like, what the fuck, this is all wrong. I have to admit, Skeletor looks pretty cool. Evelyn and Beastman, they kind of look like what they look like. But there's all these other characters like Blade and that woman with like white hair and these other goblins. Like, none of them are in He-Man. And there's actually some pretty simple humanoid looking bad guys. Like, why didn't you just make these guys? And, they got some things right, but mostly number one is bringing this thing on Earth. It's like, why is this on Earth?
The reason that so much of this movie takes place on Earth is because they had no money. Apparently, the script that Gary Goddard, the director, first got was 100% on Earth, and he kind of lobbied to have a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end take place on Eternia. So good on him for making that decision. But let's give a quick recap of what the movie's about for anyone who hasn't seen it. So this movie is about He-Man as he battles the evil Skeletor, who has seized control of Eternia and captured the sorceress in an attempt to gain ultimate power. After a failed rescue mission, He-Man and his allies are transported to Earth, where they lose the Cosmic Key, a device that opens portals through space and time. While searching for the key, they team up with two teenagers, Julie and Kevin, and fend off Skeletor's minions before returning to Eternia for a final showdown. There, Skeletor transforms after absorbing some cosmic energy, but He-Man ultimately defeats him in a climactic battle inside Castle Grayskull, restoring peace to Eternia and returning Julie and Kevin home. So when this movie came out in 87, it was a bomb, right?
Yes. This film opened on August 7th, 1987, 8787 for the date, cool date. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of different things about the budget. It's somewhere around 20 million. I've seen 22. It opened at number 3 with $4.8 million, only with $17 million domestically. And starting with the beginning of this film, there's I think a voiceover of this film and says, "At the center of the universe." Like, what? I don't even know if they ever really say that this film takes place or it starts on a planet called Eternia. It's not the center of the universe. It's weird. They talk about Castle Grayskull, but they never really show Castle Grayskull except the very vague, blurry background at the very end of the film.
Honestly, I was confused right out of the gate. I can believe that I'm at a disadvantage because I'm just new to He-Man, but there's voiceover. They can explain what's going on, and it is just confusing. So apparently, this is the culmination of a long battle between He-Man and Skeletor. They're fighting over Castle Grayskull, and now finally Skeletor has captured Grayskull, which is an important strategic victory for him. At first, I'm like, well, it's weird to just kind of start there, but okay, fine. You're starting in the middle of the action. All right. I'm guessing it's because of budget, but fine. I'm along for the ride. But even still, there's this key that Gwildor has created, which allows you to teleport.
Not in the cartoons at all.
Okay. But so Skeletor has a key that he can use to teleport. That's how he got into Grayskull. That's how they took over Grayskull. Fine. But Gwildor also has a key. And so they say, well, we're just going to teleport into Grayskull. No, we can't do that. That's a bad idea. We'll be ambushed. But luckily, Gwildor has these caves that also lead directly to Castle Grayskull. So I guess they just walk there. While they're in Grayskull, there's a battle and they end up on Earth. But then Skeletor is really obsessed with finding Gwildor and the other key. But why? Because he has a key. And if He-Man is the threat, well, He-Man's gone now. So yeah, sometimes the villain's like, I have to go after the hero just in case so he can't come back and defeat me. But also it seems like he could just sit there and wait until the moon rises and then he gets the power from the sorceress or whatever. Just a lot of the A to B to C of it is head scratching.
And that makes sense that you're confused, because even as a kid who had watched all 100 and something episodes of this show, I was so confused from the beginning, because it's not one of these modern anime kind of shows where there's a long-standing mythos from episode to episode. Most episodes are self-contained. I mean, yeah, they introduce later characters who you never saw them before episode 40, but they're in most episodes after that, sure. But every single episode is about the good guys like He-Man and his friends defending Castle Grayskull from Skeletor, and they're always, trying to get it, and he always loses. It's like every episode of the Roadrunner. He's always trying to get the Roadrunner, he always loses. Pinky and the Brain, he's always trying to take over the world, he always loses. This movie starts with he's captured Capsule Grayskull, and now we're going to just leave the planet. It's so weird.
Yeah.
He's done everything he wants. It's like a Looney Tunes cartoon that just says the coyote has captured the Roadrunner, he's eaten the Roadrunner, and now we're going to follow the coyote as he is an intern as an accountant in Phoenix. Like, why are we having a Roadrunner Coyote movie that's not taking place in the desert with him chasing the Roadrunner? And you're right, this cosmic key, and then they go to Earth, and in and of itself, that's not necessarily a bad idea. It, again, just annoys me so much of all the things they do wrong about everything from the costumes to the locale to the motivations. Even this Teela character. Teela is a badass in the cartoon. Actually, all the women are badasses in He-Man. Evelyn, she doesn't take any shit from Skeletor. She's the only one that can stand up to him. The mother kicks ass. There's an entire other aspect of He-Man, which is that he has a secret identity, Prince Adam, that's the plot of so many episodes that he has to not tell most of the people. It's in the theme song of these are the only characters that know about his secret, and he has to keep it secret from everyone else. And always changing into He-Man in secret, completely taken out of the film. Teela is kind of a whiny character in this film. She's never kicks ass in this film.
I did appreciate that Teela and Man-at-Arms say each other's names a lot, because I didn't know these characters. I do think it's worth pointing out that it is totally stupid that your hero is called He-Man and that his best friend is Man-at-Arms. The word man is in the name of these two male characters, and also just the name He-Man, pronoun, gender. That's terrible fucking writing.
So Man-at-Arms is his rank. He is the Man-at-Arms.
Yeah, they do say that.
His real name is Duncan. I don't know if they ever mentioned that in the movie.
Maybe once, but he's referred to as Man-at-Arms more than Duncan.
Right, and that's ridiculous. I will say, wonderfully cast. That guy was actually very well cast. He looks exactly like a real-life version of Man-at-Arms. Dolph Lundgren, I think, is, for 1987, probably the best person you can cast back then. He looks the part.
Yeah, he looks the part, and that's it.
Does he sound the part? No. I don't know if they redubbed it or if he had to dub his own lines again.
No. So the plan was to dub him because at this point, Dolph Lundgren was not a fluent English speaker. He had been in the US for a couple years. Very smart guy. He was going to MIT.
Yeah, he had the Fulbright scholarship. He has a chemical engineering degree. He's a very, very smart guy.
Yeah, but in Rocky IV, which came out 2 years earlier in 85, he has very, very few lines, which kind of makes sense because nobody says much of anything in Rocky IV. In this movie, he also doesn't say very much. He only speaks a couple of words at a time. A lot of the time when he is speaking, you don't see his mouth move. It's a shot of the back of his head or another character or something. I assumed that they had redubbed him, but they couldn't because apparently in his contract, he had 3 attempts to record his dialogue as a separate ADR thing. And if after those 3 attempts, the director thought that it wasn't good enough, then they could redub him with a different actor. That was the plan, except they had a tiny budget. They had no money to do redubbing with Dolph Lundgren or anyone else. So they just used what they recorded on set. I think it could work for him to be the hero of this movie without much dialogue, but it really is super noticeable that he's the hero and he barely says anything. Also, he barely does anything. He's not much of a fighter. He uses the sword a little bit throughout the movie. He uses it more at the end, but he uses a gun a lot.
That's his thing. It's his sword.
Did he have a gun in the cartoon?
There are guns, but he generally doesn't use them.
Okay.
He's going to bounce your guns off of his laser and then hit you. Duncan, Man-at-Arms will, and Teela will, and she has a bow mostly. But, one thing I also noticed right away is, did you notice the themes are all like, let's get a student who's familiar with John Williams, but is like in a high school band level to compose this. Did you notice that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the opening theme is a blatant Superman ripoff.
Absolutely.
As are the titles, the way that the names kind of fly in on the screen.
Yeah.
It's a blatant ripoff. And this score was done by Bill Conti, who did the Rocky theme. I got to believe that Bill Conti is capable of doing more. He really phoned it in for this movie.
This movie is like if you take the Superman notes and you basically look at the notes and flip like one C for a D, and it's like a worse version of it.
It is. Let's talk about Courtney Cox, her character's Julie, and her boyfriend Kevin. Everything with them is confusing and weird and dumb. So they're a couple, but they're breaking up because she's moving to New Jersey because she's sad that her parents died, and so she has to get out of town. She also really loves her boyfriend, Kevin. Before she leaves town, she wants to go to the cemetery to say goodbye to her parents. While they're at the cemetery, which you would think would be a big emotional moment, they find the key. Kevin says one thing that is very smart, where he says, it's in a crater, this fell from the sky, which makes sense. That is an astute observation, Kevin. But then he immediately picks it up and starts playing around with it and is like, oh, it must be a Japanese synthesizer. Well, why would a Japanese synthesizer fall out of the sky and land in a cemetery? And if that did happen, why would you then immediately just pick it up and start playing it? Wouldn't you think that it could be radioactive or dangerous? Like, none of that makes any fucking sense.
It's a test of time thing. You would have said it was something was Japanese back then. A really weird, very advanced, futuristic looking. And I'll give them credit. That was a very cool looking cosmic key, which is not in the He-Man mythos at all. But I give them credit. It's a neat contraption. If it was 1987, I could believe that if someone said this is a cool toy from Japan, I would understand that.
Sure.
But it goes from this is in a ground that's a crater to, oh, this is a Japanese toy. Like, you're right. Like, why does he do that?
And then he brings it to sound check because I guess he's playing the prom or something. Presumably he has a band, but he's there solo doing sound check.
On the last night his girlfriend is there.
Right. But also you can't do sound check alone. You need somebody else to check the sound. That's how sound check works.
That's a good point.
Also, though, why are you bringing your girlfriend right before she leaves town to sound check? Also, then he's like, I got to take this thing to my buddy who works at the instrument store. No, you could do that tomorrow and maybe spend some time with your girlfriend before she leaves town forever. Maybe that should be your priority. It's all really dumb. The line when Julie says that she wishes things could be different with her parents, but then Kevin says, well, that only happens in fairy tales. I was like, okay, so clearly she's going to save her parents' life somehow by the end of the movie, which is what happens. Also, though, I don't really understand what happens to her parents. So she was supposed to hang out with them, but then she decided to hang out with her boyfriend instead. And then her parents decided to fly to Catalina and they died on the way. So her dad's a pilot and they're flying to Catalina. So I guess this takes place in Southern California. Nothing about it screams Southern California. It looks like the Midwest. The takeout place where she's working, and there's a cow wandering around. There's no palm trees. There's no desert. She does say that she's going 3,000 miles to New Jersey. That, along with Catalina, made me think, okay, they're in California, Southern California, but it doesn't look like Southern California.
No, it doesn't. It's kind of a reverse Karate Kid where they move from Jersey and leave everything to go to Southern California. And she wants to leave California, leave everything behind and go to Jersey.
But in Karate Kid, the valley looks like the valley.
Right.
It's very easy to make your movie look like L.A. because so many movies are made in L.A.
You mentioned the cow, and I put that down on my notes because what is going to be the obvious in a forest, in the woods, animal to come out? A deer, like
right.
Anything like that. And a cow comes out. There are no wild cows. Not in America, not in 1987. I feel like they rented a deer for the day and something went wrong and a cow showed up on set and they're like, just fucking go with it. It's an earth animal.
Yeah. Then when they go to the takeout restaurant, they find out that humans eat animals, which
Yes.
Tila is disgusted by. And I kind of like that. Okay, they're in some advanced civilization where they don't eat the flesh of animals. I was like, okay, I'll buy that. I can understand why she would be disgusted by that idea. Although barbecue ribs, there's nothing better than barbecue ribs.
First of all, Man-at-Arms is completely comfortable eating meat.
Well, he's hungry.
And second of all, I had never heard of anyone being a vegetarian in the He-Man universe. And they did serve meat, and like it's not like it was a prominent thing, but there would be scenes of them at the palace. And yeah, there's meats, and it's a weird thing. There's this phrase that they use, like when you say goodbye to someone in Eternia, you don't say goodbye. What do you say, Al?
Good journey.
Yeah, that's what they say in the movie, but it's not a He-Man phrase. It's a weird thing.
Okay, but I mean, if they have a new thing that they say when they're leaving one another, or that Tila's vegetarian, to me, and it's easy for me to say this because I didn't watch the cartoon religiously, those are small adjustments you can make for a movie. Screenwriters always do that when they're adapting IP. They make some changes, they make it personal. Those are small, I think.
That absolutely is fair. That being said, there were so many changes that this was just another, like, what the hell?
Another phrase that they say very, very often in this movie, besides Good Journey, is, oh, Gwildor. Again, I appreciate that they said the names of the characters a lot, but the way that they say, oh, Gwildor, over and over and over again, whenever he gets into mischief, whenever he does something silly, like when he pours the barbecue sauce down his throat or whatever, it is just so blatant that they are trying to make Gwildor a thing. If there was a drinking game where you take a shot every time they say Gwildor, or even a shot every time they say, oh, Gwildor, you will pass the fuck out by the end of this movie because they say it a lot. It is also worth pointing out that Gwildor is played by Billy Barty, who I, of course, see and think of Noodles McIntosh from UHF. I know he's done a lot of other things, but that's what I know him from.
I thought he did fine. I thought Gwildor, again, I think he's a perfectly fine substitute for Orko, and I don't think it would have been a good idea to name him Orko. And I think the makeup on his character was quite well done.
It looks like one of the eyes just stops working at random.
Really?
Yeah, and then I wasn't sure if he was maybe squinting while looking at the key or something, or he was supposed to be deep in thought. I don't really think there's a in-universe explanation. Maybe, whatever, doesn't really matter. But, while they're on Earth, Julie, she becomes Team He-Man fast. Kevin is hesitant. Lubbock, the cop, played by the principal from the Back to the Future movies, he is not at all buying this whole invading alien army thing. He's skeptical, and you can understand why there's some skepticism. But to me, it was shocking how quickly Julie was convinced that He-Man's a good guy. We got to help him. We got to get him this key. It's for the fate of the universe. Like, she is sold on whatever He-Man tells her, and we don't know what He-Man tells her. There has to be a moment where he explains everything that's happening. We don't see that. I assume we don't see that because Dolph Lundgren was not very good at delivering that much exposition in English, so they just kind of had it be implied. Fine, we, the audience, supposedly know what's going on, so I guess that's okay. But it's weird that she's like, we got to help He-Man, guys. Kevin, why won't you help me help He-Man? Why do you care so much? Like it felt disingenuous to me.
At one point early on in the attack on the high school, she passes out when she runs away, and then this huge muscular guy picks her up and carries her away. I guess To quote Back to the Future, she gets the Florence Nightingale effect.
Well, that's interesting because I wasn't sure if the movie was setting it up that Julie was going to break up with Kevin and then Julie and He-Man were going to get together. And Kevin's a weird dude, and I don't really understand his obsession with sound check and going to visit his friend with the synthesizer and picking up the thing and blah, blah, blah. But he's not an asshole. No. He's not like a shitty boyfriend who you're rooting for Julie to dump and be done with him. He seems like a decent enough guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does He-Man have a love interest on the show? Is that She-Ra? Teela? Someone else?
No, he doesn't. He does not have any love interest in the show.
Okay.
Prince Adam kind of is a little bit flirty with Teela, but Prince Adam is kind of a little bit of a weakling. Teela can kind of kick his ass, and Teela's always talking about how like strong He-Man is. And there's kind of the implication that kind of Teela's into He-Man, but not into Prince Adam. Sort of like how Lois Lane might talk about how great Superman is and kind of how wimpy Clark Kent is to Clark Kent.
Got it. I'm not saying that the movie needs to have He-Man fall in love with Julie or anyone else. I was just wondering. So then Skeletor comes to Earth, which, again, I really don't understand why he needs to do that. If He-Man is banished to Earth and he's got Evil Lynn, not Evelyn, but Evil Lynn, like she's there to take care of He-Man. She gets the key. I just don't understand why Skeletor would need to come to Earth and rattle his saber at He-Man. It seems like he would want to stay on Eternia just so that he can make sure he's there for the Moonrise, so he can get the sorceress's powers and stuff. But also that battle scene on the roof where He-Man is on that flying saucer kind of thing. Oh my God, that looks terrible. All of these effects look like shit.
Yeah. Now, He-Man definitely has these kind of hovercrafts. They look like either a speedboat that flies in the air, or they look like the standing up jet skis. But they're definitely not these discs that they stood on.
And while this whole attack is going on with the hoverboard and the hoverboat and these robots dressed all in black, there's just the one cop. The guy from Back to the Future, he's the only one there.
Where's the cops? Where's the army? And now there's one part that's played kind of for comic relief that later on, the cop comes back with all the other officers and they're like, all right, where's this army from space?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why don't you look at all the destroyed streetlights and everything else on the street that's completely destroyed and the burn marks that are not from fire.
Also, the school was burnt down.
Yeah.
This is not a test of time thing. I have to believe that in 1987, a school burning down in a small town, that's going to be a huge deal. All of the cops, all the volunteer firefighters.
The night before prom?
Is it the night of prom or is it the night before prom? It's not totally clear. Either way.
Prom is ruined.
Yeah. Either way, there's going to be a response, a civilian and law enforcement response. And so it's just kind of weird that nobody's there.
It is.
Also, the instrument shop, which I think is at a mall or shopping center, I mean, that gets blown the fuck up and nobody notices. I mean, I guess maybe that's a little bit of a test of time thing. Now with security footage and rings and everyone with a cell phone, word would travel faster. But it doesn't seem like this small town is that small of a small town where nobody would notice any of this.
Yeah, I agree. They get beamed back to Eternia.
Right.
And I think that was a cool set design that they did sort of like a Terminator thing where there's this like circle that gets transported as opposed to you just jumping into a wormhole, even though they had clearly established earlier on that that's what happens. They make a wormhole that you kind of jump through. Mm-hmm. I liked how they transported like half of the pink Cadillac and they transported like a little bit of a brick wall.
Right.
In the He-Man cartoon, they have these wormhole kind of things. They look very much like the whirlpool kind of thing that they jump through in the beginning. So it's a little inconsistent, but I did like the effect.
Okay, you know what's a terrible effect? The Skeletor becomes all-powerful effect. So first off, the Skeletor mask that he has for most of the movie, I guess it's fine.
No, I think it's pretty good.
Pretty good, I think, is a perfectly valid description.
Yeah.
The part on the nose, which it should be black because you would be seeing into his skull, it very clearly looks like black fabric. Fine, whatever, big deal. The mask really constricts the mouth movement. So Frank Langella, who plays Skeletor, he's the only one in this movie who's really acting, who's really going for it.
Oh, he's great in this film.
I give him credit for it. Apparently he took the role because his son really loves Skeletor and He-Man, so that's sweet. His mask work is impressive. It's distracting in that his mouth moves, I'm going to say 15% of the time. If his mouth never moved, okay, fine. If his mouth always moved, great. But the fact that it's just some of the time is weird. But anyway, then he gets transformed into this all-powerful god. He looks like one of the guys in Gwar with the crazy masks and everything. Also, he doesn't do jack shit. He's all-powerful, and he just stands there.
Yeah.
If he's all-powerful, why doesn't he, I don't know, kill He-Man, stop all of the good guys, blow up everything? For an omnipotent guy, he's pretty impotent.
Yeah, Skeletor does absolutely nothing. And again, this like golden outfit of his, not in the cartoon at all. But then again, he never does get the power of Grayskull in the cartoon. He's always just missing. That's why there's always a new episode. There's another thing that I noticed, that Skeletor fights He-Man with his staff. Skeletor definitely has a staff. The thing is, the staff is kind of like a wizard staff. It does his magic.
Okay.
And there's a couple parts when Teela like shoots her laser at Skeletor, and he just holds up his hand and like blocks it with a force field. That makes sense in a Skeletor kind of way with his staff. But Skeletor also has a sword, and yeah, he eventually takes that out too. But it's just a weird thing how you have Frank Langella fighting He-Man, and he's fighting with his staff, and he's not using magic. And it's like, why are you fighting a guy with a sword with a staff? Like, the best you could do is block him and maybe slap him with a rod. Like, if you're not going to use magic beams or something, what a dumb fight.
Apparently that fight was choreographed and shot last minute. The budget had run out, and they basically told the director, "You're done." And he's like, well, we haven't filmed the climactic showdown between our hero and our villain yet. And they gave him, I think, just one more day and a couple bucks.
No, I read that he had the budget. He had to do it himself. He had to fund it himself or something. It was one of those things.
Yes. You're right. But that's why the fight scene is in the dark. It's hard to make out what's going on. Skeletor gets a pretty lame death where he's thrown down a bottomless pit. Looks very much like the Emperor's death in Return of the Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
It's not really his death because there's not even a post-credits scene, because it's like 1.5 seconds, but you do see Skeletor's head pop up out of like a pit or something, and he says, "I'll be back," and it just goes to freeze frame.
Until Samuel L. Jackson appears at the end of Iron Man, post-credit scenes are almost non-existent. And that actually kind of blew me away as a kid, that existed there. I mean, there wouldn't be a sequel, but it was saying, yeah, I'm not dead, and there will be a sequel.
They were going to make a sequel, but Canon ran out of money after this movie bombed and Superman 4, The Quest for Peace bombed. Oh, one more thing about the ending of the movie. So Gwildor says that he's going to send Julie and Kevin back to Earth. And hey, when would you like to go back? Because I also do time travel, which was not a thing that had been discussed or mentioned at any point before in the movie. But Julie, who, remember, is very sad about her parents having died, she says, nope, present's fine. Just send us back. And then right before she goes, she's like, oh, wait a second, Gwildor, it's an afterthought that she could go back in time and save her parents. Luckily, Gwildor guessed that or assumed that for some reason, and so he sends her back to that morning. And in order to save her parents, what Julie does is take their keys. I wasn't sure if it was the car keys that they would use to drive to the plane or the plane keys, because her dad's a pilot, an amateur pilot, I guess. Maybe he has his own private jet. or maybe it's a Cessna or something.
That's what I assumed it was. I assumed it's one of those things. And also, was it bad weather that did it? Because if it's a mechanical problem, they're just going to die next time they use it.
Yeah.
Taking the keys away doesn't do anything. However, I will answer the question of your confusion. It's not that she forgets. Gwildor says, I can take you any time in your history. Where do you want to go? And it's Kevin that says, we just want to go home. And they walk through. And I think it's maybe that just maybe in the fog of everything that happened, it finally snaps on her. Because it's not Courtney Cox that says, no, just take us home, to the direct question of where do you want to go? So I think there's at least a little bit of leeway there.
Okay. But anyway, James, let me ask you, what do you think of 1987's Masters of the Universe? Do you think this movie stands the test of time?
No, this film does not. This film was not good back then. This was one of the first films that I was over He-Man, but I was just very disappointed. And you made a little joke before about being like a nerd about, the cape is not the exact angle. And it's just not the movie version of what you were hoping to see. Good. Most of all, I think the biggest sin is that it's not an exciting film. I think a lot of the cast is good enough. I really think the story is terrible. If they made the transportation floating hoverboards from those flying jet skis to that flying circle, sure, I could live with that. That's fine. But it's just weird that He-Man is just lasering everyone when that's just not something He-Man does. It's taking so many things and not even changing it into a good film that's just nothing to do with the IP. It's a bad film. I think Man-at-Arms is fine. I think Dolph Lundgren's fine. I think Gwildor is good enough. By the way, Skeletor does not have like all these minions. He has his specific bad guys. I think in the cartoon he has a lot of robots because like you couldn't kill bad guys. He has a lot of robots that they're allowed to destroy, but they couldn't kill anyone else. It's not a good film. It's not a good adaptation, and I'm just disappointed in the script they had here. Not disappointed in the actors and the crew. I think they gave it their best shot with what they had. But no, 1987's Master of the Universe does not hold up, and I do not recommend it to anyone who enjoys the He-Man IP. What about you, Al? You had never seen this film. Did it flop, or did it pleasantly surprise you, Al?
No, this movie did not pleasantly surprise me. This is a very, very, very bad movie. I think the movie gets one thing right in that it's not titled He-Man or He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, because that would have made it even more annoying that He-Man is basically a secondary character in this movie. I mean, I was expecting a lot more He-Man, and I get it. Dolph Lundgren's English wasn't great, and so they minimized his dialogue. But honestly, they could have had him do more fighting. They could have had him look cooler and act cooler and seem cooler. He's barely in this movie. Like you said, he looks the part. He looks buff and ripped, and sure, I get why he was cast for that reason, but he does nothing. I really struggle to understand the plot mechanics. The MacGuffin of the key is fine, I guess. I wrote down two things that I thought I would think as a kid in the 80s were cool. When Evil Lynn is using her scanner of the factory junkyard thing and she sees what happened in the past. I thought that was kind of cool. She just sees it on the screen. The collar that they put on Kevin that makes him tell the truth, I thought that was kind of neat.
Yep.
The holo projections honestly look kind of dumb now in a world with FaceTime and, AI generated video. But I can imagine that was cool in 87. But yeah, this movie is just crap. It looks bad. It's acted poorly. It's written terribly. I could understand why you, as a He-Man fan, were disappointed as a kid. As a adult who was never into He-Man, it is a lame, disappointing movie. For what it's worth, I think the new one looks incredibly stupid. Eli and I watched the trailer together, and he said, that movie looks like trash. He's a teenager, so everything looks like trash to him. Take that with a grain of salt, I guess. But This movie did not make a He-Man fan out of me, and very much does not stand the test of time.
There was another great special effect that the special effect itself was fine, but it was laughably funny that there seems to be this like public service announcement system to all of the planet Eternia, because Skeletor like projects himself like 50 stories high. That effect looks cool enough, but did you notice every time he makes an announcement, it's a vast wasteland and there's like 3 people watching him?
Well, yeah.
It just looked really funny to me.
I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying about how this small town is completely abandoned. Because this movie had such a limited budget, there was no budget for extras.
Right.
Clearly, like there should be way more alien creatures, prisoners in Castle Grayskull, observers in this town. There should be people, aliens, creatures everywhere, and they just clearly did not have the money. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. We're going to continue the trend of talking about older movies in honor of new movies that are coming out. In honor of Toy Story 5, we are going to watch Toy Story, the first movie, next week. Then we'll follow that up with Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3. We're doing a trilogy. We are doing the first 3 Toy Story movies over the next 3 weeks. I am really, really excited to rewatch all of those movies, honestly, starting with the first Toy Story. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. We are at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Also, people have been commenting on Spotify for individual episodes. I love that. Keep those comments coming. It's great to hear from you wherever you reach out to us. Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, doesn't matter. And we will see you next week. Good journey, James.
Good journey to you too, Al.